Hey guys, tonight we venture into a world of bone-deep cold, galloping chaos, and fermented beverages that double as disinfectant. You're about to wake up on the frigid steppe, smack in the middle of the Mongol Empire, 13th century. There are no heaters, no phones, no coffee. Just a thin felt tent, a skeptical horse, and a culture that prizes toughness over comfort. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing how far these sleepy little journeys travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes snap open to darkness. It's not even dawn yet. Your breath curls in cold ribbons in front of your face, and the felt walls of your GER barely hold off the freezing wind. You don't move for a moment, not because you're cozy, far from it, but because your joints have stiffened in the sub-zero air. You're wearing every layer you own, and it still feels like someone's dragging icicles down your spine. Outside, a horse snorts. Somewhere to your left, someone's hacking up the kind of cough that makes you wonder if ancient Mongols ever got bronchitis. Spoiler, they did, and they just kept going. You sit up on your makeshift bedding, just a pile of padded wool on wooden slats, and hit your head on the curved ceiling. Welcome to morning on the Mongolian steppe. Your stomach growls. The fire in the hearth died hours ago, and no one's restarted it yet. You crawl toward the center of the tent, fingers trembling, and fumble for a scrap of dried goat dung to reignite the coals. This is fuel now. You're a dung burner. You didn't even get a chance to put that in your Instagram bio. The only drink available is yesterday's Iraq, fermented maize milk. It's sour, frothy, and probably still technically alive. You sip, because hydration is non-negotiable, even if it tastes like someone dared yogurt to become evil. Outside, dawn finally bleeds over the horizon. Everything is white, flat, and endless. The kind of landscape that makes GPS cry. Your first job? Not to eat, not to dress. You have a check on your horse. Everyone in the camp is doing it. Horses aren't pets, hey. They're your ride, your heater, your fast food delivery service, your emergency escape plan. Mongols practically breathe through their horses, and you're expected to treat yours like a fuzzy god on four legs. You shamble out of the tent, instantly assaulted by the wind. The temperature is somewhere between chilling and unfair. You slip across the icy grass, scanning the hobbled herd. That one's yours. Short, muscular, shaggy. Mongol horses aren't sleek show animals. They're survival tanks. Yours gives you a look that says, "Please don't touch me." You touch him anyway. You try to lead him to the water hole, which is just a shallow frozen pit they broke open with a rock. Your horse refuses. Apparently, you've got to earn respect, even from livestock. Eventually, he lets you guide him, though not without one mild attempt to kick you. Classic bonding moment. A kid, maybe 8 years old, gallops past you bareback, whooping with joy. You've been awake 20 minutes, and already a child is out horsemaning you. You know, for confidence. Meanwhile, the other herders are scattering on various tasks. Some lead yaks to graze. Others haul frozen meat out of snow-packed holes in the ground. Natural refrigerators that double as wolf bait. You're not asked to help yet, probably because they are watching to see if you freeze to death first. Inside the GER again, the fire finally crackles back to life. The smoke has no chimney, so it hugs the ceiling before sneaking out a flap. You cough, your eyes watering, but no one else flinches. Mongol lungs were basically forged in smoke. Now, some history while your fingers thaw. The Mongol Empire, at its height under Genghis Khan and his descendants, were the largest contiguous land empire in history. We're talking from Korea to Hungary, an empire built by people who wore boots to bed and drank blood in emergencies. Not metaphorically, actually. But here's the quirky part. Despite that fearsome reputation, daily life for your average Mongol was painfully normal. Cold, tedious, smelly, filled with chores, and incredibly communal. Privacy wasn't really a thing. You shared your tent with family, elders, siblings, and sometimes goats. As you munch on a cold lump of yesterday's mutton, you begin to notice the soundtrack of the camp. Dogs barking, horses snorting, women calling out instructions. A rhythmic clink of metal on wood as someone sharpens a knife. The place is alive in a way that feels ancient and intimate. Historians still argue whether Mongol camps were truly egalitarian or if gender roles were more rigid than we imagine. You'll find women here making decisions, training hawks, even handling logistics for military campaigns. And yes, they milk the mares too. So much milking. Someone gestures for you to fetch more dung. You nod obediently and step outside. It's colder than before. Somehow, you look up, and the clouds are moving in fast, steel gray and menacing. The wind picks up. A storm's coming, and you're realizing that Mongol survival isn't about glory or strength. It's about endurance, tenacity, the sheer, stubborn will to stay alive another day. Your boots are soaked. Your breath is shallow. You're clenching your jaw so hard it clicks. But when you glance across the camp, you see a toddler in a felt Odyssey toddling barefoot across the ice. Laughing. You're not lasting long here, friend. But let's see if you can make it to lunchtime. The horse is watching you again. Judging probably, you just spent the better part of an hour stumbling through chores that 8-year-olds seem to complete blindfolded while singing. Now comes the part that really separates Mongols from soft-handed time travelers like yourself. Riding before breakfast. Because here's the thing. Riding isn't a hobby out here. It's not a recreational Sunday trail. It's how things get done. You want to check on the herds? Ride. Need to visit a neighbor 10 miles away? Ride. Need to chase off a wolf that got a little too confident during the night? Ride. And don't forget your bow. You're handed a saddle, which looks less like a cushion and more like a sharp wooden triangle. It's hard, high, and incredibly awkward. There's no soft leather here, just rough materials, sometimes covered in animal hide, meant to grip your thighs whether you like it or not. One of the elders smirks as he watches you inspect the saddle like it might bite you. You're told to mount up. The Mongol horse is shorter than you expect, stocky and muscular with a neck like a tree trunk. Still, when you awkwardly swing your leg over, it feels like mounting a rocket. The saddle's height makes it feel perched, not nestled, and you immediately understand why so many travelers describe these horses as practically flying over the ground. A boy nearby gives you a sharp whistle. The horse takes off, not trots, not walks, takes off. Your body isn't ready. The wind slaps your face, your stomach lurches, and your limbs pinwheel in a desperate ballet of survival. Mongol riders are trained as toddlers to balance on horseback, often learning before they can walk properly. You're clinging like a malfunctioning backpack. And yet, after a while, after a few screaming minutes, you start to sync with the rhythm. Kind of. The land rolls in wide waves, and the horse seems to know exactly where to place each hoof, as if the earth itself is its personal treadmill. You're not steering. Not really. You're just along for the ride. That's when someone hands you a pole. A long stick with a small loop at the end. It's time to herd. Yes, herding. Because breakfast comes after you make sure the animals haven't wandered into a ravine or fallen victim to those lovely Mongolian snow leopards. You're waved toward a cluster of goats. You're supposed to circle around and gently push them toward the grazing area. But the goats, sensing your tourist energy, scatter in every direction. Your horse, bless its shaggy heart, begins to correct your mistakes, weaving skillfully to corral the rogue goats while you dangle like a sock from a ceiling fan. Somewhere in the distance, someone chuckles. Loudly. Now, some context for your ego. Mongol riders were unmatched. Their military success wasn't just from brute force. It came from their unparalleled mobility. A Mongol warrior could ride for days without dismounting, even sleeping in the saddle. Horses were trained to respond to subtle shifts in weight and pressure. No reins needed, just balance, intent, and about 6 years of early childhood practice. Here's the fringe tidbit that might weird you out. They also occasionally drank horse blood during long rides. Not in a dramatic vampire way, but in a practical survival one. A small vein in the horse's neck could be opened, a few sips taken, then sealed with pressure. The horse lived. You lived. Bonding moment. Historians still argue whether this practice was common or reserved for extreme scenarios, like deep campaigns into enemy territory or long winter marches. Either way, it's one of those details that makes your Irag breakfast seem downright tame. Back to your ride. You somehow survive the herding attempt. The animals aren't where they should be, but they're somewhere and no one is missing fingers. You call that a win. Back at camp, your thighs are on fire. You dismount with all the grace of a sack of potatoes being dumped off a wagon. Your knees buckle. Everything hurts. And now, you're told it's time for the morning meal. You're expecting something hot and comforting. What you get is complicated. Breakfast is often some variation of boiled mutton, maybe a type of dumpling if someone was feeling fancy last night. Today it's bortz, dried, preserved meat that's been rehydrated over a small fire. It has the texture of a damp sandal and the flavor of regret. You eat anyway. Hunger wins. There's also a milky tea made with salt and maybe a splash of goat butter. It tastes like a soup trying to find itself. A dog steals the rest of your meat when you glance away. No one stops it. You suspect this is how they teach newcomers about consequences. While you chew on whatever crumbs remain, an elder starts tuning his Morin Kur, the horsehead fiddle. The haunting notes drift across the steppe, half song, half wind. The sound is mesmerizing, like a lullaby whispered through a storm. And it makes you wonder, how did such a brutal, efficient empire produce such soul-stirring music? That's the paradox of the Mongols. Brutality and beauty, side by side. A people known for wiping cities off maps, but also for poetry, music, and complex family structures. Your ride this morning wasn't just a chore, it was part of a culture rooted in movement, rhythm, and connection with the land. You glance at your horse again. It yawns. You think it might actually like you now. Or maybe it's just tired from dragging a human-shaped sack of incompetence across the tundra. Either way, you've survived your morning ride. Barely. The horse is watching you again. Judging, probably. You just spent the better part of an hour stumbling through chores that 8-year-olds seem to complete blindfolded while singing. Now comes the part that really separates Mongols from soft-handed time travelers like yourself. Riding before breakfast. Because here's the thing. Riding isn't a hobby out here. It's not a recreational Sunday trail. It's how things get done. You want to check on the herds? Ride. Need to visit a neighbor 10 miles away? Ride. Need to chase off a wolf that got a little too confident during the night? Ride. And don't forget your bow. You're handed a saddle, which looks less like a cushion and more like a sharp wooden triangle. It's hard, high, and incredibly awkward. There's no soft leather here, just rough materials, sometimes covered in animal hide, meant to grip your thighs whether you like it or not. One of the elders smirks as he watches you inspect the saddle like it might bite you. You're told to mount up. The Mongol horse is shorter than you expect, stocky and muscular with a neck like a tree trunk. Still, when you awkwardly swing your leg over, it feels like mounting a rocket. The saddle's height makes it feel perched, not nestled, and you immediately understand why so many travelers describe these horses as practically flying over the ground. A boy nearby gives you a sharp whistle. The horse takes off, not trots, not walks, takes off. Your body isn't ready. The wind slaps your face, your stomach lurches, and your limbs pinwheel in a desperate ballet of survival. Mongol riders are trained as toddlers to balance on horseback, often learning before they can walk properly. You're clinging like a malfunctioning backpack. And yet, after a while, after a few screaming minutes, you start to sync with the rhythm. Kind of. The land rolls in wide waves, and the horse seems to know exactly where to place each hoof, as if the earth itself is its personal treadmill. You're not steering. Not really. You're just along for the ride. That's when someone hands you a pole. A long stick with a small loop at the end. It's time to herd. Yes, herding. Because breakfast comes after you make sure the animals haven't wandered into a ravine or fallen victim to those lovely Mongolian snow leopards. You wave toward a cluster of goats. You're supposed to circle around and gently push them toward the grazing area. But the goats, sensing your tourist energy, scatter in every direction. Your horse, bless its shaggy heart, begins to correct your mistakes, weaving skillfully to corral the rogue goats while you dangle like a sock from a ceiling fan. Somewhere in the distance, someone chuckles. Loudly. Now, some context for your ego. Mongol riders were unmatched. Their military success wasn't just from brute force. It came from their unparalleled mobility. A Mongol warrior could ride for days without dismounting, even sleeping in the saddle. Horses were trained to respond to subtle shifts in weight and pressure. No reins needed, just balance, intent, and about 6 years of early childhood practice. Here's the fringe tidbit that might weird you out. They also occasionally drank horse blood during long rides. Not in a dramatic vampire way, but in a practical survival one. A small vein in the horse's neck could be opened, a few sips taken, then sealed with pressure. The horse lived. You lived. Bonding moment. Historians still argue whether this practice was common or reserved for extreme scenarios, like deep campaigns into enemy territory or long winter marches. Either way, it's one of those details that makes your Iraq breakfast seem downright tame. Back to your ride. You somehow survived the herding attempt. The animals aren't where they should be, but they are somewhere, and no one is missing fingers. You call that a win. Back at camp, your thighs are on fire. You dismount with all the grace of a sack of potatoes being dumped off a wagon. Your knees buckle. Everything hurts. And now, you're told it's time for the morning meal. You're expecting something hot and comforting. What you get is complicated. Breakfast is often some variation of boiled mutton, maybe a type of dumpling if someone was feeling fancy last night. Today it's borts, dried, preserved meat that's been rehydrated over a small fire. It has the texture of a damp sandal and the flavor of regret. You eat anyway. Hunger wins. There's also a milky tea, made with salt and maybe a splash of goat butter. It tastes like a soup trying to find itself. A dog steals the rest of your meat when you glance away. No one stops it. You suspect this is how they teach newcomers about consequences. While you chew on whatever crumbs remain, an elder starts tuning his moin kur, the horsehead fiddle. The haunting notes drift across the steppe, half song, half wind. The sound is mesmerizing, like a lullaby whispered through a storm. And it makes you wonder, how did such a brutal, efficient empire produce such soul-stirring music? That's the paradox of the Mongols. Brutality and beauty, side by side. A people known for wiping cities off maps, but also for poetry, music, and complex family structures. Your ride this morning wasn't just a chore. It was part of a culture rooted in movement, rhythm, and connection with the land. You glance at your horse again. It yawns. You think it might actually like you now. Or maybe it's just tired from dragging a human-shaped sack of incompetence across the tundra. Either way, you've survived your morning ride. Barely. You're starting to defrost a little, just a little, as you duck back into the gur, the felt-walled home that's your only real shelter out here. At first glance, it looks like something out of a minimalist camping catalog. Circular, low to the ground, kind of cozy in a rustic way. But once you're inside, reality seeps in. It's hot near the fire, freezing near the edges, and filled with a complex mixture of smoke, sweat, cooked meat, and something sour that might be your socks. You stand awkwardly, unsure where to sit. There's no furniture, at least not by modern standards. Just piles of rugs, bedding, and wooden chests that double as seats. An elder gestures you toward a spot, and you shuffle over, careful not to knock over a pot or a sleeping dog or someone's ceremonial bow. The fire in the center pops, sending sparks upward to a hole in the roof. The tuno, a little skylight that also lets out smoke but not enough to stop your eyes from watering. You try not to cough. Coughing suggests weakness, and weakness isn't exactly fashionable here. The woman tending the fire adds a few more patties of dry dung. You're used to it now, sort of. It doesn't really smell when it burns. It just adds to the background musk of prehistoric dorm room. As she stirs a pot of boiling fat and maybe onion, she hums a tune that sounds oddly modern. It's hypnotic. You almost relax. That's when the toddler next to you sneezes directly into your face. You blink. He laughs. Welcome to Gur life. The family Gur is a hive of activity. There's no concept of my room or personal space. Everyone sleeps, eats, works, and argues in the same circular space. You learn that the left side is traditionally for men and tools, the right side for women and cooking gear. The place of honor, straight across from the door, is reserved for elders, guests, or sacred objects. Don't sit there unless you want someone to accidentally drop hot soup in your lap. Oh, and shoes. Don't point them at the fire. Ever. It's deeply disrespectful. You already messed that one up this morning, and someone quietly moved them while giving you a look that translated roughly to "try that again, city boy." Now, Mongols were, and still are, incredibly mobile. The entire gur can be disassembled and packed onto a few yaks or carts in under an hour. It's engineered for motion, not permanence. Everything inside has a place, a purpose, and a way to survive the bumpiest of roads. Even the beds roll up like futons. The chest lock. The stove breaks down. IKEA wishes it were this practical. As you sip more of the salty tea, because apparently hydration is now a form of punishment, you take in the little details. A curved bough hanging from the rafters. A tangle of horsehair ropes. Dried curds called arul stacked like pale stones in a dish. You try one. It crunches. And keeps crunching. And keeps crunching. It's like eating chalk someone left in a salt mine for 5 years. But it's packed with protein and lasts forever. So it's a staple. Fun fact. Mongol children were often weaned directly onto meat and these rock-hard curds. No applesauce. No sippy cups. Just bite the brick and figure it out. Historians still argue whether this tough love style upbringing produced resilience or just really early dental problems. Suddenly, someone opens the flap of the gur, and a gust of frigid air blasts through. Everyone groans. The baby cries. A goat bleats from somewhere. A man steps in, covered in snow, holding a bundle of fur. He sets it down next to the stove and gives a nod. No one says much, but a small shuffle begins. Someone refuels the fire, another stirs the stew, and someone else starts carving strips of the new arrival. Dinner is going to be fresh, and you try not to look directly at the bundle. For modern folks, gur life seems wild, chaotic, uncomfortable, and impossibly communal. But there's a rhythm to it, like a beehive in winter. People move around each other, anticipating needs, balancing tasks. You feel awkward, clumsy, like a walking spoon in a chopsticks world. But even that has its charm. You're given a chore, help wash bowls with snow. You bundle up again, head outside, and find the snow a welcome break from the smoke. You scrub the bowls until your fingers go numb and come back inside, holding them like fragile artifacts. Everyone nods. You're not entirely useless. Yet, by midday, the air inside the gur is turned warm, damp, and vaguely greasy. You sit near the fire, steam rising from your clothes, try not to fall asleep. A grandmother begins chanting a lullaby to a baby on her lap. The tune is older than any building you've ever been inside. Then she glances at you and smiles, revealing exactly one tooth. It's a moment of weird tenderness. For all the toughness, the Mongol household is full of quiet, shared care. Food is always offered. Space is made for you, even if you're an outsider. You're not exactly family, but you're not entirely foreign either. Still, there are rules. Many. Don't lean on the central pillars. Don't walk clockwise inside the gur. It's always counterclockwise. Don't whistle after dark. And if you break wind near the fire, just don't. That's considered bad luck, and if someone glares at you afterward, they might not be joking. So you sit, you breathe, you let the heat and the weird, cheesy smell of curd and will wrap around you. A dog nestles against your leg. Someone tosses another log, or dung brick, into the fire. The toddler sneezes again, this time into his own shirt. Progress. You're surviving. Barely. And you haven't even faced Genghis Khan's justice system yet. That's next. The shouting starts outside the gur. It's sharp, fast, and unmistakably tense. Mongolian is already a language that sounds like it could arm wrestle you. But this is different. Urgent. Heated. Someone's in trouble. You poke your head out. A crowd is gathered. 2 men are in the center, one red-faced and waving his arms, the other standing perfectly still like he's calculating angles of attack. You hang back, heart beating faster and then notice something strange. No one is jumping in. No one's yelling over them. They're just watching. Because here in the Mongol Empire, justice isn't a matter of emotions. It's codified, clear, and sometimes terrifyingly efficient. You're about to learn what happens when someone breaks Yasa, Genghis Khan's legendary law code. You've heard of it, maybe. A mythical set of rules said to be strict, absolute, and enforced without mercy. Some historians argue that the Yasa was more a flexible oral tradition than a rigid law book. Others insist it was a formal legal code compiled and enforced across the empire. One thing they agree on, the punishments were serious. The man yelling is accusing someone of stealing a horse. This is not a petty crime here. Stealing a horse could mean death. Not because it's a luxury item, but because it's a lifeline. Horses are food, transportation, defense, and status. Taking one is like stealing someone's house, car, and emergency exit at the same time. Suddenly, you're very aware that earlier this morning, you may have accidentally taken the wrong saddle. You quietly shuffle back in a crowd. Try not to make eye contact with anyone who owns rope. The accused finally speaks. His voice is calm. He denies it, says he borrowed the horse with permission. That changes things. Now it's not just theft, it's an accusation of lying. A respected elder steps forward. You assume he's some sort of judge or arbitrator. He listens. He nods. Then he asks questions that cut right through the drama. Where were you yesterday? Who saw you? What color was a horse's tail? It's like a detective show in fast forward. And you're not just watching, you're learning. Because Genghis Khan's laws didn't leave a lot of wiggle room. They were designed to prevent infighting, protect property, and keep discipline in a society that moved constantly and couldn't afford chaos. Breaking the law could mean a fine, lashes, exile, or death. And your social rank didn't matter. If a prince stole a sheep, he could be executed just like a herder. Equal opportunity justice. Fringe detail time. Under Yasa, spilling someone's blood could be considered a no-go, especially among the nobility. So, many executions were carried out by strangulation or breaking the spine, methods that kept blood inside the body. Morbidly neat. Historians still argue whether this was rooted in spiritual belief or just practical squeamishness. Either way, it makes you suddenly extra grateful for your squeaky clean criminal record. Back at the trial, the elder delivers a verdict. No theft, just a misunderstanding. But the accuser is fined for false accusation. A significant number of livestock, actually. You watch the man swallow his pride and agree without protest. This isn't about feelings. It's about order. And you get the sense that if he'd refused, the crowd would not have stayed silent. You head back toward your gur, trying to disappear into the background. But an older man intercepts you. His face is unreadable. He says something, and a kid translates. You talk too much. You blink. What? The kid clarifies. Yesterday, you said someone's cooking smelled like boiled feet. She understood. Oh, right. That little joke you whispered during dinner. Apparently, sarcasm is not immune to translation. The elder doesn't scold you, though. He just gives a subtle nod toward the center of camp, where a group of warriors is sitting silently. One of them runs his thumb slowly across the blade of a dagger. Message received. You're starting to understand how this world works. Reputation is everything. One wrong word, one careless action, and you're not just that weird guest who hates Kurds. You're a liability. And liabilities don't last long in a world where everything can be packed and moved in hours. You sit quietly in the gur that afternoon, try not to draw attention. Someone hands you a piece of bortsag, fried dough that's about 70% oil and 100% joy. You nod, take a bite, and this time, you say nothing. Later, during evening chores, a boy tells you more about the punishments for various crimes. If you spill milk intentionally, that's disrespecting sustenance, possibly worth lashes. Kill a falcon? Death. Cheat at a horse race? Also death. Insult a host? Possibly death or exile. You ask what exile means in this context. He shrugs. You go that way. He points into the endless grassland, and you don't come back. You wonder how many people just walked off into the steppe and disappeared forever. The Mongol Empire had a way of enforcing rules that didn't leave much paperwork behind. Still, for all the harshness, there's a strange stability here. Crime is low. Disputes are settled fast. Property is protected. You can leave your saddle outside overnight and find it untouched in the morning. That sense of mutual accountability, the social glue, is stronger than any castle wall. As the sun sets, painting the sky in gold and violet, you realize something. You're not just adapting to the cold or the food. You're adapting to the expectations. One wrong move might not get you killed immediately, but it will ripple through the community. You'll be watched more closely, trusted less. And trust, out here, is survival. So maybe keep your jokes to yourself, especially the ones about boiled feet. Your legs still ache from yesterday's herding adventure, and your dignity hasn't fully recovered from being outmaneuvered by a goat. You're hoping today will be more stationary. Maybe something low impact, like wool sorting or not dying of frostbite. But the elder with the dagger thumb has other plans. He tosses you a bow. Well, not so much tosses. It's more like he lets go of in your general direction, and you barely catch it before it smacked your face. It's heavier than you thought, strung so tight you can practically hear a hum. There's a quiver, too, half full of arrows fletched with eagle feathers. No one explains anything. You're expected to know. Welcome to training day. You follow the others out to a wide, open field. Snow patches crunch beneath your boots, and the air smells of horse sweat and wood smoke. Someone hands you the reins of a familiar horse. It snorts, almost groaning. The look in its eyes says, "You again?" You mount up, more smoothly this time, though there's still a slight ouch moment that will stay with you until next spring. The others ride in a loose circle, chatting, laughing, casually shooting arrows at targets while barely glancing at them. And here you are, struggling to figure out which end of the bow to hold. The training begins with a warm-up, straight riding, no weapons. You try to mirror the others, shifting your weight with each stride, relaxing your knees. You feel a little less like luggage and a little more like a participant. Then comes the hard part, archery, while moving, on horseback. Let's clarify something. Mongol warriors were masters of mounted archery. They used a composite bow made from horn, sinew, and wood, which had incredible range and power. They could fire in all directions while galloping, forward, backward, even sideways, hitting targets while bouncing across the landscape like caffeinated jackrabbits. Historians still argue whether their precision came more from lifelong training or the unique design of their bows. But either way, their skill was legendary. At the Battle of Kalkar River in 1223, Mongol archers shattered a force 3 times their size with hit-and-run tactics that left enemies confused, terrified, and dead. You, meanwhile, can't even get the string pulled back. You draw once. Your arm trembles. The bowstring barely moves. An old man shakes his head and mutters something that probably translates to, "Bless his heart." You try again, and again. Finally, you manage to knock an arrow and let it fly. It soars majestically into a tree nowhere near the target. A dog barks, unimpressed. Now they add motion. The target is a bundle of twigs stuck in the ground about 50 feet away. Everyone gallops past it, loosing arrows like it's muscle memory. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Perfect hits, each one. Your turn. You ride forward. The horse begins its rhythmic gallop. You stand in the stirrups, trying to balance. You draw, aim, your fingers slip. The arrow drops. You panic, grab another. By the time you release, the target is somewhere behind you, and your arrow nearly takes out a tent flap. Someone claps sarcastically. But here's the thing, they don't stop you. They don't take the bow away. They let you try again, and again. You fall off once. Okay, twice. You land in something that smells suspiciously like yak. But you keep climbing back up, because in the Mongol Empire, perseverance matters more than talent. Skill can be trained. Spirit must be proven. Quirky aside, Mongol kids played games that prepared them for war. One involved shooting coins off a string from horseback. Another? Bone tossing, using knuckle bones from sheep as dice, markers, and even mini weapons. Childhood was less peekaboo and more military prep with snacks. Hours pass. Your muscles scream. Your fingers blister. But you finally hit a target. Not dead center, but close. Everyone cheers. And for once, it's not sarcastic. Someone hands you a chunk of dried meat. A warrior's reward. You sit, panting, chewing, unsure if your teeth or ribs hurt more. And then one of the younger riders, barely a teen, shows off by riding backward and hitting a moving target. Twice. Cool. Great. Definitely not crying internally. Evening falls, and the temperature plummets. A breeze cuts across the field like a knife. You're about to head back to camp when one of the warriors grins and calls out a challenge. You don't understand the words, but the intent is clear. You're going one-on-one. They set up a narrow strip of land. 2 riders, 2 bows, 5 targets. Whoever hits more wins. You mount up, numb from exhaustion, but something inside you stirs. Maybe adrenaline. Maybe the early signs of hypothermia. Either way, you grip the bow tighter. First pass, you miss the first 2 but land the third. Second pass, you overshoot completely. The other rider nails all 5 effortlessly. Still, you get a nod. A real one this time. You're not good. Not even close. But you're improving. And in this empire, that counts. Later that night, huddled by the fire, someone drops a worn leather pouch next to you. Inside are 3 iron arrowheads, flat, triangular, and wickedly sharp. A gift. You don't ask what they expect you to do with them, but you keep them close. Because you're starting to realize, in the Mongol Empire, you're either useful or you're gone. You wake to the smell of something cooking, and not in a good way. It's not breakfast so much as a challenge. A test of resolve. You peek outside the gur and see a bubbling pot balanced over the fire, guarded by a woman stirring it with the slow, grim commitment of someone who's made this same dish every day since Genghis was in diapers. The scent hits you fully now, boiled meat, smoke, and what you're pretty sure is actual fur. Time for dinner. Yes, it's technically morning, but out here, meals don't follow a clock. They follow the stomach and the availability of goat parts. You shuffle toward the circle where people are already passing around bowls. The broth is cloudy, the chunks of meat bobbing like prehistoric fossils. It's served with a side of hard cheese and what might once have been onions. You take a tentative bite. It's hot. That's the good part. The flavor is earthy, which is a generous way of saying it tastes like boiled muscle, seasoned with hoof and aged over a fire fueled by dung. You chew because stopping would be suspicious. The texture is somewhere between beef jerky and a bath sponge. Someone leans over and offers you a treat. A chewy, glistening strip of fat, still attached to the skin. You blink. He nods. This is the good stuff. You accept it, trying to hide the panic in your eyes. It's salty, rubbery, and slides around your mouth like it's trying to escape. You swallow and nod politely. He beams. You passed the first test. Mongol cuisine wasn't designed for flavor. It was designed for fuel. Life on the steppe demanded high calories, high fat, and 0 waste. Every part of the animal was used. Organs? Absolutely. Bones? Boiled for hours until the marrow dissolved into soup. Eyeballs? Not common, but not out of the question. Mainstream history tells us that Mongols thrived on meat and dairy. Mutton, horse meat, goat milk, curdled yogurts, cheese dried to rock hardness. They made dried meat, borts, to carry on long journeys, soaked in broth before eating. And of course, the infamous arag, fermented mare's milk, was a staple drink. But here's a weirder bit. Some jars were known to hang meat from the ceiling rafters, letting it cure in the constant smoke. Kind of like a prehistoric smokehouse meets family kitchen. Imagine living inside a Slim Jim. Historians still argue whether Mongol diets were actually healthier than those of city dwellers in China or Persia. Some suggest that the high-protein, low-carb intake kept people lean and strong, while others point out the lack of variety likely led to deficiencies, especially in vitamins and fiber. Scurvy was probably on a menu more often than they admitted. Now, back to your dinner or breakfast. Who even knows anymore? You're offered another delicacy, quirky, a special meal made by placing hot stones inside a metal pot layered with meat, onions, garlic, and sometimes whole potatoes. The stones are pulled from the fire, glowing and crackling, and sealed inside the container with the ingredients. After hours of steaming, the meat becomes incredibly tender. Today's version almost meets that promise. It's tender in some spots, chewy in others, and somehow still contains a few hairs. No one else seems to mind. You try not to gag as a child gleefully gnaws on a goat knuckle like it's a lollipop. You reach for the tea. Ah yes, Mongol tea, suti tsai. Salty milk tea that tastes like someone tried to make soup from a latte. It's made with black tea, mixed with water, milk, salt, and sometimes butter. It doesn't ask to be liked. It just demands to be respected. You sip. It burns, but it works. Your stomach settles, slightly. Then they bring out the vodka. Yes, Mongols had their own take on distilled spirits. Arki, usually made from fermented milk. You're handed a shallow bowl. It smells like betrayal. You raise it in a toast because that's what everyone else is doing. Whisper a tiny apology to your liver and drink. It's warm, sharp, and kicks like a startled yak. But after a few seconds, you feel it. Heat in your chest, warmth spreading through your limbs. You exhale and realize, for the first time all day, you're not cold. Everyone cheers. You've officially survived a Mongol meal. Kind of, because next comes the part no one warned you about. Cleanup. And here's the rule. If you eat, you help. You're handed a greasy pot and a brush made from bundled horsehair. The washing method? Scrape out the residue with a twig, rinse with hot water if you're lucky, and then, yes, rub it clean with milk curd. Not soap, not sand. Curd. Apparently, it's mildly acidic and does the job. You're skeptical. Still, by the time the sun starts to fade and the wind picks up again, your belly is full, your hands are raw, and your brain is trying to decide if you're still hungry or just traumatized. One thing's for sure, you'll never complain about soggy cereal again. Later, huddled by the fire, someone hands you a strip of dried cheese and asks if you want to try making buzz, dumplings filled with minced meat and fat, steamed inside a metal pot. You nod enthusiastically. Dough. You can do dough. Turns out you can't. Your first dumpling collapses like a sad balloon. The second one leaks. The third gets an approving grunt. Small victory. The cook claps you on the back, nearly dislocating your shoulder. You're part of the meal now. Not as food, as effort. You chew your last bit of cheese as the night settles in. Outside, wolves howl. Horses stamp. Somewhere a kettle rattles. Inside the gur, it's hot, smoky, and smells like soup-soaked socks. And yet, you're starting to feel oddly at home. You're sitting by the fire, belly full of questionable meat and dairy, when the air in the GER changes. It starts quietly. Someone dims the flames by removing a chunk of burning dung, lowering the room into a flickering half-darkness. The chatter softens. The children are ushered out. A few elders sit upright, eyes closed, humming softly. Then the shaman enters. You weren't expecting this. You thought spiritual life out here might involve whispered prayers, maybe a carved totem or two. Instead, you're about to witness something much older. Stranger, and definitely not for vibes. The shaman is draped in laid robes that sway with feathers, beads, and small metal discs that jingle as she walks. Her face is partially painted, black streaks across her cheeks, a hint of red at the brow, and her expression is unreadable. She doesn't greet anyone. She doesn't need to. The room shifts again, not physically, but something in your chest tightens. She sits cross-legged beside the fire, pulls a drum from her side, and begins to beat it in a slow, steady rhythm. You feel it more than hear it, a low thud like a second heartbeat. You try not to blink too much, or breathe too loud. Welcome to a Mongol shamanic rite. Now, mainstream history tends to emphasize the Mongol Empire's pragmatism, its brutal efficiency, military genius, and tactical brilliance. But what often gets overlooked is how deeply spiritual this society was. Long before Buddhism spread through the empire, Mongols practiced Tengrism, a shamanic belief system centered around Tungri, the eternal blue sky, and a balance between earth, ancestors, and spirit. The shaman was more than a priest. She was healer, spiritual negotiator, and community anchor. Her job? Mediate between this world and the unseen. And if the drumbeat is anything to go by, she's opening a door. Suddenly, she begins to chant, low, guttural tones mixed with high-pitched cries. It sounds like she's speaking to someone or something that isn't in the room. The smell of burning herbs fills the air. Sage, maybe, or something stronger. The smoke coils upward, thick and intentional. You're told not to speak, not to point, not to laugh. Ever. Spirits are listening, and they do not appreciate sarcasm. Then she stands and starts to move. It's not a dance, not quite. More like a weaving of steps through space, arms raised, feathers trembling. Her eyes are half shut, and her mouth moves constantly, forming words in an ancient cadence. You can't tell if she's singing, scolding, or summoning. Fringe fact: some Mongol shamans used mirrors sewn into their clothes to trap evil spirits. Others wore elaborate headdresses representing birds of prey, the messengers of Tungri. If you see feathers, it's not for fashion, it's for flight between realms. Historians still argue whether Mongol shamanism was unified across the empire or deeply localized and inconsistent. There are records of both male and female shamans, of animal sacrifices, of sky burials, and of trance states that lasted for hours. The scholarly debate continues. But here, tonight, there's no ambiguity. Everyone believes this is real. The drumming intensifies. You start to feel strange, like the beat is syncing with your pulse. The fire throws shadows on the walls that seem to move a little too independently. One of them looks vaguely like a horse. Another, like a hunched man with a long beard. You blink. The shadows are gone. The shaman stops moving. Silence. She kneels and speaks to the fire. Not to the people, to the flame itself. It crackles in response, almost as if it's listening. She lays something into it. A handful of herbs, a sliver of bone, a small bundle wrapped in wool. Smoke erupts again, and this time, the elders begin to murmur. It's a prayer, a song, or maybe a memory. You don't understand the words, but the emotion is unmistakable. Longing, grief, respect. Then someone coughs. The spell breaks slightly. The shaman's head snaps toward the sound. Her eyes, still half-lidded, lock with the offenders. There's no anger, just acknowledgement. The cougher bows slightly. No one speaks of it again. Later, as the rite ends, the drum slows. The fire dims. The shaman speaks in a quiet, firm voice. The ritual is done. You think that's it, but then she turns toward you. She gestures. Everyone looks at you. You freeze. The translator leans in. She says your spirit is loud. Oh, loud is bad? She says your dreams are tangled. Cool. Definitely not spiraling right now. She says you should sleep outside tonight. Ah, there it is. No one mocks you. No one laughs. They just accept the decree. You grab your blanket and your coat and trudge outside, where the wind immediately tries to turn your face inside out. You find a spot near the herd, close enough to warmth, far enough from judgment, and lie down. The stars above are razor-sharp, and the Milky Way blazes across the sky like spilled ash. You try to calm your breath. You don't know if your spirit's loud, or if the shaman was just trying to get you to stop whining about the cheese. But as you lie there, heart pounding, you start to feel something. The land isn't silent. It hums. The animals shift in their sleep. The wind carries voices, or maybe that's your imagination. Either way, you understand something now. Out here, belief isn't optional. It's A. And tonight, the air feels heavy. The next morning arrives cold, early, and with an awkward crick in your neck. Sleeping outside wasn't restful. It was survival adjacent. You managed a few hours bundled up against the horses for warmth, occasionally waking to swat at frost forming on your eyebrows. The stars were beautiful. The ground was not. Still, no one mentions your exile. It's as if the shamanic verdict never happened. You're handed breakfast like usual, some reheated borts and salted milk tea, and one of the older boys slaps your shoulder like you're part of the team again. Maybe you passed the test. Maybe they just forgot. Or maybe they like keeping you guessing. Either way, you're summoned to the center of camp for something different today, a visit to the Khan's court. You weren't expecting this. You figured you'd get sent back to scrubbing pans or playing chew toy for a goat. But no, today, you're walking straight into the political heart of the camp. The court isn't a throne room. There are no stone walls or velvet carpets. It's a semicircle of people seated on felt cushions and furs around a large, ornate jar. There are banners fluttering above the tent, painted in bold red and black symbols. Hawks, wolves, stylized steppe horses. Guards with fur hats and heavy sabers stand on either side of the entrance. They don't smile. You're ushered in, told to remove your boots, and step barefoot onto the thick layered rugs. The warmth inside is immediate. The scent is rich: meat stew, horse sweat, and burning juniper. There's soft music in the background, a Morin Kur playing something slow and haunting. And there he is, not Genghis Khan himself. Obviously, you're not that historically lucky or unlucky, but a local Noyan, a high-ranking commander or noble, possibly a relative of the great Khan, or at least someone who gets to drop his name like a celebrity uncle. He doesn't look how you expected. No golden armor. No dramatic mustache twirling. He's compact, broad-shouldered, probably in his 40s, and wrapped in dark blue silk embroidered with gold thread. His eyes are sharp, like they're constantly solving equations. A hawk sits on a perch behind him, casually preening. You're told to bow. Not too low, that's for servants. Not too short, that's disrespect. Aim for sincere, but not pathetic. You bow. He nods. You don't die. Good start. This is not a social call. The court is in session. People come forward with disputes, requests, and messages from other tribes. One man pleads for more grazing land. Another offers a rare bundle of eagle feathers in tribute. A woman discusses a marriage arrangement involving 6 horses, a felt tent, and someone's questionable cousin. It's part law office, part village meeting, part survival chess match. And every move is watched. There's tea, of course, but it's not offered to everyone. Only the inner circle drinks, and when they do, the cup is passed carefully, handle turned, hands with sleeves covering fingers, eyes slightly averted. You reach for a cup once, and are quickly redirected with a polite, firm hand on your wrist. You nod and pretend you were just admiring the glaze. One man speaks too forcefully, raising his voice. The Khan flicks his fingers. A guard moves in and gently, but unmistakably, removes him from the tent. There is no yelling, no threats, just presence. That's the terrifying part. Power here doesn't have to shout. It's worn like a second coat. Mainstream history often presents the Mongol court as crude or unsophisticated, but the reality is far more nuanced. These leaders held vast, multi-ethnic territories together with alliances, oaths, military precision, and a terrifyingly efficient information network known as the YAM, a mounted courier system that rivaled anything in Europe or Asia at the time. Quirky detail: the great Khans were known for keeping a group of record singers, historians who memorized and recited the deeds of ancestors in epic form. No paperwork, just poetic recall. Historians still argue whether these courts were centralized theocratic hubs or loose tribal councils with occasional bloodshed. But today, in this tent, it's clear that formality and hierarchy run deep, and missteps are not forgiven twice. Eventually, the Khan turns his gaze toward you. Someone whispers in his ear. He nods, then asks a question. You don't understand the words, but the tone is gentle, curious. A translator helps. He asks why you came. You answer, haltingly, that you're here to learn, to understand, to survive. He grins, not mockingly, genuinely. Then he leans back, makes a short gesture. Someone brings out a dish. It's a ceremonial offering. Meat, dumplings, and a small carved cup filled with kumis, stronger than the arag you've tasted before. It's meant as a challenge and an invitation. You eat, you drink, you nod, and suddenly, you're no longer the outsider who fell off a horse 3 times yesterday. You're the strange guest who sat with the Khan and lived to tell the tale. As you leave, one of the guards pulls you aside. He says nothing, just hands you a small token, a polished piece of antler carved with a stylized wolf. It's not fancy, but it's not nothing. Later that night, someone whispers that the Khan's court sometimes uses such tokens as favors. Small marks of trust, or maybe just a way to keep track of who might be useful later. You tuck it into your belt. You still don't belong. But now, they're watching you a little differently. The sun is barely above the horizon when you're shaken awake by a boot in the ribs again. At this point, it's practically a good morning kiss. You sit up, half-baked in your furs, and notice something unusual. The mood in camp is electric. People are already armed. Horses are being saddled with extra care. Children are corralled toward the elders' tents. Someone hands you a helmet that looks like it's seen better centuries. No one's saying it, but you can feel it. Something's about to happen. By the time you stumble outside, a wide circle has formed on the field near camp. Warriors stand shoulder to shoulder, bows slung across backs, lances pointed downward in that casually threatening way Mongols seem to excel at. A small group of older riders sits at the center, facing each other in a tight square formation. One raises a hand, and the circle goes still. A drumbeat starts. Mock battle time. But here's the thing, it's not just for fun. These aren't war games in the modern sense, with soft foam swords and safe words. These drills are full contact, fully armed, and sometimes full injury. You blink and realize the younger riders already have welts forming on their forearms and shoulders. One is limping, probably from a not quite blunt spear to the thigh. You're handed a wooden club and pointed toward the fray. You glance down at it. It's slightly cracked, which somehow makes it scarier. Also, it smells weird, like fermented goat or really old soup. You join the outer ring, heart pounding. The rules? Unclear. The vibe? Controlled chaos. You wait for your moment. Then, movement. The center riders charge outward, triggering a chain reaction. Suddenly, horses are galloping. Arrows are flying, but aimed at targets placed just behind the crowd, not at people, thankfully. Spears clash against shields, and your job, as it turns out, is to survive for as long as possible without embarrassing your host tribe. You charge, not because you know what you're doing, but because standing still seems wise. The first thing that hits you is dust. Thick, gritty clouds kicked up by hooves and bodies. You can't see more than a few feet ahead. You swing wildly and, by some miracle, connect with another club. The jolt goes up your arm like a lightning bolt. You stumble back, panting. Around you, the battle churns. Warriors ride past, swinging swords, snatching ribbons from each other's belts in a sort of aggressive capture the flag. One rider somersaults off his horse, rolls, then springs up behind another, tackling him clean off his mount. It's graceful and horrifying. Mainstream historical note. Mongols trained constantly for war, turning drills like this into both rehearsal and recruitment. Genghis Khan believed discipline was the secret to conquest. His troops could feint a retreat, turn, fire mid-gallop, and strike in perfect synchronicity. These weren't rowdy mobs. They were precision tools honed on days like this. Quirky detail. Some Mongol soldiers wore silk undershirts beneath their armor, not for fashion, but because silk threads, if pierced by arrows, would wrap around the tip and allow safer removal without tearing muscle. Weirdly brilliant. Painful, but brilliant. You get hit. It's not bad, just a club to the shoulder, but it spins you off balance. You drop your weapon, fall to your knees, and taste dirt. Someone laughs. A hand pulls you up, and suddenly you are face to face with the teen who did backflips during archery training. He winks and tosses your club back to you. You nod, file his face under a void during combat, and retreat just outside the active chaos. Others are doing the same, resting, nursing bruises, tightening armor straps. This is a marathon, not a skirmish. Then you hear the yelling. Two riders have locked horns, metaphorically, thankfully. They are screaming in Mongolian so fast it might as well be smoke signals. One throws a punch. The other dodges and spits back something that sounds like an insult involving yaks. This is no longer part of the plan. A whistle blasts. A real one. Not your fancy wolf caller. And within seconds, older warriors step in, separating the fighters and barking orders. You're reminded, not so gently, that violence here has structure. Even mock battles need rules. You break the flow. You pay. The circle reforms. And a new game begins, gut slicing. Okay, it's not quite as grisly as it sounds. Riders compete in slicing targets while galloping full speed. The targets? hanging sheepskin bundles filled with water, suspended from poles. The effect? Pretty convincing when one explodes like a ruptured organ mid-swing. You're up next. You're handed a short saber, blunt, but not harmless. The others take off, horses thundering. You breathe once, dig in your heels, and gallop forward. The sheepskin sways in the wind. You raise your arm, swing, and miss. Completely. You ride through the middle of the course in stunned silence. Blade still held high like an awkward party favor. Someone claps, slowly, sarcastically. Again, you circle back. Try again. This time, you graze the edge of the bundle. Water spurts. Not a full gut slice, but enough for a pity chair. Someone hands you a cup of Irag as a reward/consolation. Historians still debate how much of this daily training contributed to Mongol battle success versus psychological dominance. The truth? Probably both. Facing an army that practiced disembowelment for sport would make most enemies think twice. As the drills end, the warriors regroup. Horses steam. Bodies glisten with sweat. A few riders bear fresh cuts. Nothing serious, but enough to stain sleeves. The elders survey the scene, nod, and declare the day successful. One even walks over to you, places a hand on your shoulder, and says something that, by tone alone, means not terrible. You'll take it. Night falls, and a feast begins. A bonfire roars. Skews of meat turn slowly. Musicians play rapid, off-kilter melodies on stringed instruments. Riders retell the day's highlights, each story more exaggerated than the last. You get a special mention as the outsider who fought like a confused day. It's oddly affectionate. Later, one of the warriors carves a strip of boiled hide into a small bracelet and ties it around your wrist. It's stiff, smells faintly of broth, and means you were part of the game today. That matters, hey, because in the Mongol Empire, you don't win respect with words. You earn it, gut slice by gut slice. Today, you're trusted with a diplomatic errand. That sounds peaceful, right? A break from war games and boiled fat. Maybe you'll carry a letter, offer a few pleasantries, sip some tea with a visiting official, and not a lot. No bruises. No hoofprints on your thigh. Except this is the Mongol Empire, where diplomacy can be more dangerous than battle, and tea might be your last drink if you're not careful. You're told a foreign envoy is arriving today. A Persian, perhaps, or a Chinese bureaucrat, depending on which camp you're currently orbiting. The details are vague. What's clear is that this is important. You've been told to dress appropriately, fewer holes, more fur, to bow but not grovel, and, most importantly, to watch what you say, or don't say, or imply by blinking. You arrive at the ceremonial early. It's been cleaned out and rearranged for formality. Banners hung, rugs fluffed, the air filled with the scent of burning herbs and boiling meat. A small table has been set near the fire, its surface gleaming with lacquered wood and flanked by cushions that look suspiciously unsat on. You're told to sit nearby, but not at the table. That's for the real guests. Then they arrive. The envoy dismounts, trailed by a few scribes and one guy carrying what is very clearly an ornate box wrapped in silk. Gifts. Always gifts. The Mongols respected strength, but they loved tribute. He enters with confidence, his robes flowing, and his beard so expertly shaped it deserves its own title. His manner is smooth, but watchful, like someone very aware of how many skulls line the empire's borders. He bows. The Mongol host bows back. You nod awkwardly and immediately regret it. The greetings begin. Words in Mongolian, then Persian, then translated again. Poetic pleasantries. Stiff formalities. The envoy speaks of trade routes, shared ambitions, mutual profit. It's like a chess match made entirely of compliments, and every word could end a treaty or start a war. You try not to yawn. Then they bring out the tea. It's served in small, beautifully carved cups, each placed deliberately in front of a guest. You're handed one, and suddenly every nerve in your body goes on alert. Because you remember what they told you. In diplomacy, every gesture matters. Taking a wrong cup? Insult. Drinking before the Khan? Disrespect. Not drinking at all? Suspicious. Drinking too much? Weakness. No pressure. You hold the cup. You watch the envoy lift his. You mimic him, sip slowly, carefully, letting the salty tea coat your mouth like it's a sacred ritual, which it kind of is. He glances at you once, unreadable. You pretend you didn't notice. The conversation continues. Someone brings out buzz, steamed dumplings filled with meat and spice. You watch everyone else to see if this is a just for display thing or an actual snack. It's the latter. So you chew, slowly. Then it happens. The envoy makes a comment. Something vague, something mild, but the tone? Off. The Mongol host frowns. Everyone stiffens. You just keep chewing, praying your dumpling isn't about to become your last meal. The tension simmers. The envoy corrects himself. The moment passes. But you realize something important. Diplomacy in the Mongol Empire wasn't delicate. It was sharp. Precision mattered. Subtlety was survival. One misplaced word, and suddenly you're not sharing lunch. You're negotiating the terms of your captivity. Mainstream history often paints Mongol diplomacy as either overly brutal or non-existent. But the truth is far more nuanced. Yes, the Mongols demanded submission, but they also sent emissaries, drafted multilingual contracts, and respected foreign customs, unless those customs disrespected them. Then they sent horsemen. Lots of horsemen. Historians still argue whether Mongol diplomacy was driven more by genuine openness or cold-blooded strategy. But no one doubts its effectiveness. Genghis Khan once sent a caravan of envoys to the Khwarezmian Empire, only to have them murdered by a paranoid governor. The response? Total annihilation of the Khwarezmian dynasty. So yeah, diplomacy at stakes. Meanwhile, the envoy here is starting to relax. He's laughing. The dumplings help. One of the Mongol aides even jokes about the size of the envoy's ceremonial hat. You think it's a joke. Everyone laughs, so you do too. Probably too loud. Definitely too loud. The envoy glances at you again, and this time smiles. Maybe you're growing on him. Or maybe he thinks you're just amusingly clueless. Either way, the meeting wraps. Hands are shaken. Gifts are exchanged. The ornate box is opened to reveal a bundle of silk and a tiny, jewel-encrusted dagger. It's handed over with reverence, received with a nod, and promptly examined for hidden blades. This is routine. The envoy departs with a flurry of bows and pleasantries, and the tent begins to empty. You let out a breath you've apparently been holding since the first sip of tea. Someone claps you on the back. Hard. You didn't die. The translator says cheerfully, "Good job." You nod dazed. Later that night, someone tells you a story, half legend, half history, about a Chinese emissary who brought a scroll covered in gold leaf poetry to a Mongol general. The Mongol wiped his hands with it. The envoy fainted. The Mongol was confused. "Why write on gold?" he reportedly asked. "Too soft for wrapping meat." Quirky, brutal, and oddly pragmatic. That's Mongol diplomacy. You glance at your now empty teacup, still trembling slightly in your hand. You may have survived a mock battle, but this was the real test. And somehow you passed it. You just gotten used to the idea of sleeping through the night when someone yells your name. Or rather, something that sounds like your name, as translated by a grinning teenager who apparently thinks it's hilarious to call you goat face. You groan, sit up, and immediately realize something's different. The camp is in motion. Not just bustling, moving. Entire jars are being taken down. Felt walls rolled up. Poles stacked. Belongings tied into tight bundles. Horses and yaks are being loaded like furry semi-trucks. The air is thick with urgency and the slightly panicked bleating of a goat that has definitely lost track of its herd. And you've got 10 minutes to pack. You scramble to roll your bedding, but the blankets keep slipping and you're pretty sure your boots are under a yak cart. A small child helps you gather your supplies. Well, mostly just watches and laughs while chewing on dry cheese. You ask why everyone's moving. The answer is frustratingly vague. The grass here is tired, not a poetic metaphor. Literal grass. The herd has chewed it down, so it's time to move. Like right now, this isn't a once-in-a-while event. Mongol life is mobile by design. Whole camps shift locations based on weather, forage, and the availability of water. Staying in one place too long is death. Slow, itchy, resource-depleting death. The average Mongol family could pack up an entire household in under an hour. The gur? Collapsible like a pro-grade camping kit. Furniture? Lightweight and stackable. Even the kitchen can be disassembled and reloaded onto carts or the backs of oxen. You, on the other hand, are still trying to remember which direction your pants are supposed to face. By the time you stumble out of the gur, dragging your bundle like a defeated game show contestant, the camp is almost gone. The structure you slept in is already flat on the ground, its bones being tied to a wooden cart by two elderly women who haven't broken a sweat. You try to help lift a pole. It immediately slips. You get scolded gently but firmly and redirected to just hold this rope and don't move. You do so with the reverence of someone clinging to their last thread of dignity. Once the carts are loaded and the animals wrangled, the caravan begins. There's no ceremony, no dramatic speech, just a collective, synchronized departure. A few scouts ride ahead. Families follow in clumps, some on horseback, others walking beside carts, babies bundled tight against their mothers' backs. You trot alongside, bouncing on your slightly disgruntled horse, trying to avoid stepping in anything too squishy. And this is when the real test begins. Because Mongol migrations are long, the land stretches endlessly. Grass, dirt, maybe some rocks if you're lucky. The cold wind never stops, and the sun stares you down like it's judging your SPF strategy. There's no playlist, no podcast, just the sound of hooves, wheels, and the occasional toot of someone spitting air rag into the grass. You ask how far you're going. The answer, far. Thanks. Very specific. Mainstream history tells us that Mongol mobility was one of their greatest strengths. Armies moved faster than messengers could report them. Camps could vanish overnight and reappear hundreds of miles away. The landscape was their map, and they knew every bend, stream, and grazing field. What you didn't know, this mobility extended to everything. Government offices, entire workshops, even the royal court. Genghis Khan was once known to relocate his entire administrative staff across thousands of kilometers. Basically a mobile DMV on horseback. Fringe tidbit? Some accounts say Genghis had a literal silver tent for his command center. Massive, glittering, and packed on 30 carts when he moved. Your soggy bundle of mutton sandwiches pales in comparison. Historians still argue whether the constant movement was strictly practical or also deeply spiritual, tied to notions of balance with nature, the spirits of the land, and a deliberate avoidance of permanent roots. All you know is that your legs hurt, your throat is dry, and you're pretty sure you just developed a new kind of blister that will be studied by future archaeologists. Hours pass. The camp finally pauses. A scout has found water. Horses are unbridled, carts unlocked. You drop to the ground, half frozen and half cooked by the sun. And that's when someone points out the real kicker. You only made it halfway. The tribe will camp here for the night, but tomorrow? Another leg, possibly longer. No one will tell you the final destination. Maybe they don't know, or maybe they don't care. The point is motion. Survival requires it. Still, there's a strange peace in this rhythm. The rolling, relentless travel bonds people. You share food. You laugh. You pass the same goats 3 times because they walk faster than you. That night, a new fire is built. The gur is rebuilt from memory and muscle. You help, awkwardly, but better than before. You even get the stove set up without lighting your boots on fire. Progress. You eat your dried meat, and sip your tea and stare at the stars. Same sky, new ground. You're beginning to understand something crucial. In the Mongol Empire, home isn't a place. It's wherever the fire burns, wherever your horse stands, wherever the herd can breathe. Stay still and you die. Keep moving, you live another day. The night air bites harder here in this new patch of steppe. You wrap your coat tighter, rub your hands together, and try to look like you're not freezing to death, which to be honest, you kind of are. But the others seem energized, excited even. Tonight, you're told, is special. You're not entirely sure what that means until someone places a shallow bowl of warm blood in your hands and smiles like they've just handed you a mug of hot cocoa. You stare at it. They nod. The meaning is clear. Drink. Now, before you panic, this isn't some random hazing. This is a bonding ritual. A serious one. You're being invited to take part in Anda, the ceremony of becoming blood brothers. The Mongols didn't throw the term around lightly. Anda was more than friendship. It was a sacred pact, a chosen family, and in some cases, a political alliance so strong it outranked actual kinship. Genghis Khan himself had a famous Anda, Jamukha, who was once his closest ally and later, tragically, his rival. You're not aiming for historical greatness tonight. You're just trying to not spill any of the horse blood currently steaming in your bowl. Yes, horse. It's fresh, likely taken from a vein in the horse's neck, in a controlled way that doesn't harm the animal. It's warm, slightly metallic, and smells like copper and commitment. You're expected to sip it, just a little. Symbolic. You do. It's not as bad as you feared. Still bad, but not panic-level bad. Your partner in this ritual is a young warrior named Burrow. You've shared a tent with him, ridden beside him, and he's only laughed at you about 40% of the time, which is a promising rate of respect. Now, he takes a blade and draws a small cut across his palm. You're expected to do the same. You hesitate. He sees it. Then he smirks and slices his own hand again, a bit more dramatically. You sigh, grit your teeth, and nick your palm. It stings. The cold makes it feel sharper than it probably is. You press your hand to his. The blood mingles. Words are spoken. A short oath. You don't understand most of it, but the intent rings clear. From now on, Burrow is your brother. This is not a casual promise. In the Mongol world, and amidst someone who would ride into death with you, who'd share food, horses, protection. It could even carry into the afterlife, depending on which spiritual tradition you followed. Historians still argue whether the ritual of Anda had strict rules or if it varied by region and tribe. Some say it involved formal witnesses and shared property. Others believe it could happen in private, forged by shared struggle rather than ceremony. But tonight, for you, it's all real. After the ritual, a fire is lit. A large one. The tribe begins to gather. This is the other half of the evening's event. Kumeyaay, or throat singing. You didn't think your ears could be surprised anymore. Then someone steps forward, closes his eyes, and begins to sing. Except it's not singing, not in the way you know it. The sound is deep and layered. A single note drawn from somewhere ancient, and then, on top of it, a second higher tone like a flute made of wind. It's otherworldly. You've never heard anything like it. It feels like being inside the music instead of just hearing it. And this man isn't even trying that hard. Kumeyaay is traditional Mongolian throat singing, where one voice produces two, sometimes three, distinct tones simultaneously. It's a feat of breath control, resonance, and pure bodily magic. Historically, it's been used to mimic the sounds of nature, wind, birds, rivers, and to communicate across long distances on the steppe. Quirky detail. It said that some herders use kumeyaay to soothe animals. Not lullabies, just sonic harmony that settled the beasts. Imagine calming a horse with what sounds like a didgeridoo haunting a glacier. You're handed a drink, Arki, the milk vodka again. It burns less this time. Maybe you're adapting. Or maybe your tongue gave up hours ago. Then Burrow grabs your shoulder. He wants you to try throat singing. You laugh. He doesn't. You try. The sound that emerges is something. A gargle cough mixed with a yawn and a hint of existential dread. Children laugh. A woman nearby covers her ears. Burrow beams with pride. Apparently, you're hilarious. But it doesn't matter. The point isn't skill. The point is trying. That's what tonight is. Ritual, music, blood, and belonging. A tribal glue made from memory and meat and music. Later, as the fire crackles and more people take turns singing, some beautifully, some catastrophically, you feel something loosen in your chest. You're still a stranger here. Your clothes are wrong. Your voice is laughable. You're afraid of the cheese. But now, you're a stranger with a brother. You touch the cut on your palm. It's beginning to scab. You glance at Burrow, who raises his cup and nods. His hand is wrapped. He looks proud. You drink to that. As the night deepens, the songs slow. The elders hum lullabies. Even the dogs curl up close. And you, wrapped in a felt blanket that smells like smoke and horse, finally start to understand. Belonging isn't about blending in. Sometimes it's about bleeding a little and being seen. Dawn comes brutally early. Your head is pounding, whether from the Arki, the Blood Brother ceremony, or just sheer fatigue. It's hard to tell. Either way, your mouth tastes like you gargled with smoked butter, and your eyes feel like they've been sandpapered by the wind. Then someone throws a thick fur tunic at your face. Dress. Campaign starts now. Wait, what? Turns out, the tribe is being called to support a broader military movement. You thought you were here to observe nomadic life. Maybe herd some sheep, learn a few songs. Nope, you're being marched to war. Well, not officially war, but something close. A long-distance expedition to support a distant Mongol force along the northern border of a Chinese province. Or maybe it's a punitive raid, or just a strong reminder to a regional governor who got a little too bold with his tax policy. The point is, you're riding out. Today, you've never dressed so fast in your life. Layers upon layers. Wool underclothes, felted trousers, heavy boots, a tunic padded with fur, a thick coat over that, and finally, a belt that's more of a portable toolkit than a fashion accessory. Knife? Check. Fire striker? Check. Dried cheese? Ugh. Unfortunately, check. You're handed a bow, a small sword, and a spare quiver. Your horse is saddled and already impatient. You can't feel your toes, but apparently, that's just campaigning comfort. The caravan assembles quickly, packs loaded with supplies, carts creaking, warriors mounted and stone-faced. You're given a position near the back. Not because you're useless, okay, maybe a little, but because experienced fighters are up front. You're to observe, help when needed, and, most importantly, not die. You begin riding, and riding, and riding. Hours pass. The wind is constant, slapping your face with a mixture of snow, dust, and contempt. Your ears go numb. Your nose forgets it ever worked. And still, the Mongols push forward like it's a casual stroll. One man beside you sings softly. Another eats a chunk of bortsog with one hand while guiding his horse with the other. You can barely stay upright. Here's something the history books don't always emphasize. Mongol campaigns were grueling not just because of battle, but because of the movement. Soldiers could ride for 80 to 100 miles a day, thanks to rotating horses and inhuman endurance. Armies arrived weeks before anyone expected them, already fed, already armed, already annoyed. Fringe detail: some Mongol units brought along carts full of dried dung specifically to build fires in enemy territory where wood was scarce. That's right, biofuel. It's logistics with a scent. You break midday, not to rest, just to water the horses and swallow a frozen dumpling that may or may not still contain a bone. You eat with one glove off, and your fingers immediately regret it. Then back on the horse. By evening, the terrain changes. You're passing through low mountain passes now. Steep, narrow, snow-dusted. The wind becomes sharp, knife-like. Your breath turns to ice in your beard, and your joints begin muttering threats. The caravan slows. Everyone is tense. This pass. Not safe. Bandits? Maybe. Ambushes? Possible. Wild animals? Definitely. You remember someone saying something about tigers once, and now every shadow looks suspiciously feline. And then drums. Soft at first. A thudding, low rhythm from somewhere ahead. You freeze. The Mongols don't. They spur their horses forward, forming a V-shaped pattern. Arrows ready. Lances lowered. It's all instinct. No shouting, no panic. Just precision. You do what you do best. Stay behind the guy who looks like he knows what he's doing. The source of the drums reveals itself. Not an army, just a scouting party. Traitors, maybe. Or a warning. Their leader offers a toothy grin and a few respectful bows. Nothing happens. No violence. Just a tense few minutes of nonverbal negotiation. Then the Mongols relax. Crisis averted. But the message is clear. This isn't play acting. One wrong signal, and things could have turned very real very fast. Mainstream accounts tell us Mongol campaigns were brutal, but they were also calculated. Genghis Khan didn't build the largest land empire through chaos alone. He used timing, intelligence, mobility, and, above all, fear. The psychological weight of Mongol precision often won battles before a single arrow was loosed. Historians still argue whether Mongol campaigns were purely military or often veiled diplomacy, showing strength to force negotiations. Your guess? Both. Because today felt like half raid, half parade. Eventually, you set up camp in a protected valley. Jairs aren't built this time, just tents and lean-tos. Fires are small, hidden from view. This isn't a celebration. It's a pause, a breath before whatever comes next. You're assigned to sleep beside the horse herd. Not for protection. You're not the protector. You're the alarm system. If something attacks, you'll be the first to scream. You lie awake, wrapped in fur, staring at the stars, which are just as bright here as they were on the open steppe, but colder. Sharper. Burrow joins you. He doesn't say much. Just tosses you a strip of jerky and minds chew slow. You nod, grateful. Then he leans back and whispers a story about a man who once fell asleep during a winter campaign and woke up buried under snow, still breathing. The others called him Ice Fox from then on. You ask if the story's true. Burrow shrugs. Maybe, maybe not. But if you wake up with a foxtail, don't be surprised. You chuckle, then tuck yourself deeper under your blanket. Because whether it's myth, morale, or metaphor, stories are how these people survive. And tomorrow, you ride deeper into the mountains. In fur, with frozen toes, and a horse that still thinks you're the weak link. You don't remember falling asleep. You just remember waking up to the sound of coughing. Deep, dry, hacking. Someone nearby, maybe two people. Then the horses start shifting restlessly, their breath forming thick plumes in the cold. One neighs sharply. Another kicks at the ground. Something's wrong. The camp is moving slowly this morning. No drills. No banter. People are quieter. A few figures sit slouched by the fire, wrapped in more layers than usual. You notice someone wearing a mask, not the ceremonial kind. Just a strip of cloth tied over the mouth and nose. You know that look. Even in the 13th century, plague has a face. And now you're wondering if it's finally caught up to you. The Mongol Empire was famous for a lot of things. Conquest, horses, terrifying battlefield efficiency. But it also had one unintentional legacy, spreading disease. Thanks to their massive trade networks, including the Silk Road and the Yam postal system, goods and information traveled at unprecedented speeds. So did germs. You tried to shake off the fey. Maybe it's just a cold, or smoke inhalation, or altitude. But someone sneezes behind you and 3 people step away. Subtle, but fast. Welcome to Mongol-era epidemiology. That evening, a guard mentions rumors. Talk of illness spreading in a nearby camp, weeks away by horse. Not official, of course. Just whispers. He shrugs. If it's real, we move fast. Still, the paranoia spreads faster than the fever. You see fewer shared bowls. Less singing. More staring. You've seen this before. In the modern world, in documentaries, in disaster fiction. But this time, there's no hazmat suit. Just a wool scarf and some increasingly uneasy glances. To distract yourself, you try to focus on the positive. You're not dead yet. Also, you've been given a new job. Less medical, more clandestine. Tonight, you're sent with Burrow and 2 others to scout a nearby pass. Just in case, they say, keep your eyes open. You don't ask for details. You've learned that out here. Fewer questions mean longer life expectancy. You ride out under cover of dusk. No torches, just moonlight and the occasional grunt of a horse who also wishes it were home in a warm GR eating dumplings. The pass is quiet, eerie. Wind funnels through the rocks like a whispering ghost. At one point, Burrow stops abruptly and gestures for silence. You all crouch behind a snowbank. He listens, then nods. False alarm, he says. You almost thank him for not letting you die. Then he adds, probably. Perfect. As you return, he hands you a small packet wrapped in hide. Don't lose this, he says. If someone stops you, don't open it. You look down at the packet. You look up at him. This is spy stuff. No one said anything about being a spy. He explains, vaguely, that certain messages can't travel through normal channels right now. Too risky. Too many eyes. So you're now a temporary courier. Congratulations. Mainstream history often focuses on Mongol military might, But their intelligence network was just as impressive. Scouts, spies, translators, map makers, and code runners made the empire move like a well-oiled war machine. The Yam system, a chain of relay stations across thousands of miles, let the Great Khan send messages faster than most kings could prepare for battle. Fringe detail. Mongol couriers often traveled with special medallions, paisa, inscribed with their authority. Yours is a carved bone token. Not fancy, but enough to show you're not just some freezing idiot with a goat phobia. Historians still argue whether this intelligence system was modeled after Chinese networks or evolved from tribal signaling traditions. Either way, it worked, and it helped create the first true Eurasian information highway. A shame it also spread fleas. You don't open the packet. You do, however, tuck it under your tunic and pray it doesn't leak, explode, or contain anything alive. Back at camp, tension has turned to restlessness. People whisper about enemies, about fever, about traitors. You hear the word poison once. Not about food, about people, ideas, paranoia. You try to stay invisible. But now, you're a message carrier, a marked man. That night, you sleep lightly. You hear things. Feet crunching snow outside your tent. Hushed voices. The sharp inhale of someone suppressing a cough. You don't sleep much. And in the morning, another man is missing. No one speaks of it. But the camp moves again. South this time. Away from the rumors. Away from the coughs. But you know how this works. Sometimes, the fear moves faster than the facts. And you're now somewhere in the middle. Part of the machine. And just maybe, part of the danger. The morning sky is white and blinding, cloudless yet dull, like it's been scrubbed too hard. The camp is already half vanished into the horizon by the time you stumble from your tent, rubbing the cold from your eyes and checking your hidden packet. Still there, still sealed. Today feels heavy. No one says much. You notice more swords strapped than usual. Less chatter. Riders mounted early, as if they were already expecting the unexpected. Even Burrow isn't cracking jokes. He just nods at you, eyes narrowed, jaw set. Then someone points at you. Your name, your new one, the barely pronounceable one they've given you, is spoken with weight. You're told to follow the elders to the back ridge. You do. It's a steep climb, your boots slipping on frost-covered grass. At the top, there's a small circle of warriors and elders. One holds a rope. Another carries a shallow wooden box. And at the center, there it is. A hole. Freshly dug. Narrow. Deep. You freeze. There's no ceremony. No chanting. Just a gesture. Get in. You glance at Burrow. He's nearby. Arms folded. Face unreadable. You start to ask, is this a joke? But the words catch in your throat. You see the look in the elder's eyes. Not cruel. Not mocking. Stern. This is a test. Welcome to your temporary burial. It's an old ritual. Part initiation, part purification, part, let's see if you completely unravel in the dark. You strip off your outer coat, climb into the pit, and lie down on the cold earth. Someone places a fur under your head. Small mercy. Then they cover you. Not entirely. There's still a gap near your face, but enough. Enough to feel the weight of soil, the sudden silence, the raw, primal aloneness. The air smells of roots, old ash, and something vaguely coppery. You breathe slowly. In, out. Dirt filters through your hair. Time slips sideways. This is symbolic, supposedly. A death before rebirth. To bury your old self. To test your will. Some Mongol tribes used this method as a vision-seeking rite. Others as punishment. The lines between the two were always a bit flexible. Mainstream historians document few examples of actual burials, but oral accounts, passed down by herders and elders, describe them vividly. And historians still argue. Were these symbolic deaths acts of spiritual cleansing, or just extreme stress tests designed to separate the weak from the truly step-worthy? To you, it's becoming more than academic. The ground presses in. You hear nothing. No birds. No wind. Just your heartbeat. You think about your first day here, fumbling with reins, choking on curds, failing at archery, mumbling through throat singing. You think about the way the air ag burned, The way the shaman stared through you. The way Burrow's blood felt warm on your palm. And now, you're underground. Still breathing. Still here. Minutes pass. Maybe hours. You stop keeping time. Eventually, a sound, a scrape, a shovel. Light pierces the edge of your vision. A face appears. It's Burrow. He pulls you out. You gasp, stumble. Feel the cold air fill your lungs like it's the first breath you've ever taken. You're shaking. Not just from the cold. But no one mocks you. No one laughs. They nod. You've passed. Or at least, you've endured. That night, a fire is built. Not for warmth, but for marking. For transition. Meat is shared. Songs are sung. You aren't asked to sing, but someone puts a cup of arki in your hand and clinks it against yours. And Burrow says, now you've died with us. You'll live with us. It's the closest thing to affection you've heard from him. Later, wrapped in your blanket, staring into the flames, you realize something profound. This world does not care if you were special before. It only cares that you're present now. Not flawless, just awake, alert, alive. You are changed. No longer just the outsider. Still a foreigner, sure. But you've bled, fought, suffered, swallowed the fat, endured the dark. You won't last forever in the Mongol Empire. But tonight, you made it through the day. And that, in this brutal, breath-stealing, magnificent world, is everything. The fire has burned low now. The wind outside the gur hums with a softness that wasn't there before. Horses shift in their sleep. Somewhere a throat sings, a quiet, wavering lullaby that floats just above the breeze. You lie back, body sore, heartbeat steady, and let your eyes close. The steppe stretches endlessly beyond your thoughts now. Hills roll like frozen waves. Stars shimmer overhead, unmoving, eternal. That cold you feared on your first day, it's still here, but it no longer bites. It just exists, like the wind, like the silence. You remember the taste of boiled mutton, the burn of milk vodka, the laugh of a child as you fell off your horse for the third time. These things settle in you now. Not sharp memories, but softened impressions. Shapes in smoke, echoes in the dark. You've seen the heart of this empire. Not just the battles and the rules, but the warmth, the loyalty, the breathless effort it takes to simply exist here. Tomorrow, they'll pack the chairs again. The camp will vanish like it was never there. But for tonight, you're wrapped in furs, surrounded by people who have shared their world with you in the hardest way possible. And somehow you've survived. Let yourself drift now. Let the dust settle. Let the horses run across your dreams. Sleep deep. Sleep warm. And if you hear a drumbeat in the dark, don't be afraid. It's just the sound of the steppe remembering you.